A prominent college football reporter and a polarizing lawyer are firing back at the idea that the Grant of Rights is finished in 2027 and Florida State and Clemson can waltz out the door for free.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I just can't wait till we get to the actual meat and potatoes of discovery and the court argument.
Ooh, you and me both, brother. You and me both.
Speculation season has been crazy. By the way, thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. There's a new preseason batch of ACC Power Rankings. We'll talk about those. I want to get into, because we've talked about preseason player of the year, about first team all conference, but who's going to win coach of the year this year? I want to get into that. But first, Kenton, we spoke about it late last week. This new information that people have gathered from the unredacted portions of that ESPN TV agreement that has been released to the public. Most of the good stuff is not, legible. But as far as what people can actually read, there's definitely some steam for the idea that perhaps in 2027, you need either a brand new grant of rights or you need at least a 2/3 vote from ACC teams to ratify a new TV deal, which means theoretically Florida State and Clemson might just be able to skip out the door for zero exit fee. But there are now a couple of counter arguments to that idea. How are you doing today, Kenton?
I'm doing great. Dono, I like being right. And these cases are giving me a lot of room to be right because there are so many people that are so sure of things that never quite pass the smell test in real life. I've been watching a lot of Monk lately, and I get to look at the fans on Locked On ACC a lot and say, here's what happened, and break down why what they're saying is complete and utter lunacy. I'm enjoying it. Let me not say ACC fans. Let me be very direct with this thing, okay? Because when I catch flight, it's going to be direct. Florida State and Clemson fans, I'm talking to you all. I'm talking directly to you all because it seems to be that everybody else is living in a certain set of realities about things, but every time information comes out, all of it is to your good. All of it. That's so interesting. It's like if you were a part of some type of hedge fund or something like that, and despite dips and all that, and despite the world being on fire and the market taking a huge crash, they're like, oh yeah, our gains are still there. Yeah, we're still. Bernie Madoff is probably your guy.
I was about to say Bernie Madoff. His gains were still good during.
Yeah. I'm sure. And that's what I'm looking at a lot of these Florida State and Clemson fans like right now, because again, there are so many aspects to these cases and the grant of rights and all that are very much so like, hey, this may work out for the ACC. And that's why I'm glad that we do what we do the way we do it, where we talk about things where, hey, this does not look good for the ACC. This is a win for Florida State. This is a win for Clemson. Hey, this doesn't look good for Florida State and Clemson. This is a win. I'm glad that we do it in that way because it'd be hard to get on here and delude ourselves every time. The ACC is perfect. The deal is perfect. Nobody can ask for a better deal. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. You look insane.
Well, I think it's important, to present both sides. And, I know that Florida State fans have not been, too friendly in our comment section recently because we do present counterpoints, right? And listen, when we've talked about times where they've gotten these victories, small victories in court, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm very anxious to see how this plays out. But anytime we bring up something that doesn't pass their agenda of just tell me we're leaving tomorrow. Oh, you see, did you read that? We're out tomorrow. So, and again, I understand that people are already going after this reporter and this lawyer. The reporter is very well respected. The lawyer is very polarizing because he presents a very pro ACC stance, which a lot of people don't want to hear. But ESPN college football reporter David Hale wrote, he said, from my reporting on this with numerous league and school administrators, I haven't talked to anyone who expects ESPN to decline the option. That's the 2027 option that everyone talks about. Nobody expects, according to Hale, that they will decline the option. And the sticking points about renewing, he says, are not about FSU and Clemson, but rather more prosaic issues, which means like dull everyday. I don't know why he used such a big word, but I had to look it up. Dull everyday things like broadcast windows and assurances on possible future expansion, i.e., don't go adding 3 new schools without the network's enthusiastic support, he said. And he was commenting on an X post from someone that this guy is like public enemy number 1 for Florida State fans, David McKenzie, who's a lawyer who definitely takes a very pro ACC stance on everything. So
Absolutely.
Disclaimer, consider the source, but he has a law degree that most of us don't have. He says, he jokes, it's right there. FSU and Clemson can leave the league in 2027 without paying a dime. It's done. No need to buy all these lawyers anymore. Boats. That was the sarcastic portion of his post. Then he writes, ESPN is going to pick up the option. Why wouldn't it? Doing so gives certainty. It's also cheap for ESPN, he said. So that's I feel like Kenton, he might watch the show, David Hale.
It's so crazy, Dono. It's so, if only somebody could have said, hey, we may not be the most viewer getting conference, but in comparison to what others are paying for entire conferences, the ACC is getting a sweetheart deal on the ACC. If only somebody would have said that, Dono. If only, they may be criticized. They may be called a liar, a hater, ignorant Utah fans, with all due respect. No disrespect to the Utes fans. Hey, I'm sure you all are wonderful people. But they may be called those things, Dono. They may be bald and handsome, but they'll be called those things. They'll be called those things. Again, the numbers don't work out in a way that it makes sense for ESPN to cut. I'm not saying that ESPN is paying as low for our rights as they are, or not our, but as low for the ACC's rights as they are for like the National World Series of Darts or anything like that. Like, no, they're paying substantially more, but they're making so much more out of it. Even if you say, hey, without Florida State and Clemson, the viewership declines so drastically, it's like, okay, but does the viewership decline enough to where all of a sudden you can't come by any ad money for American football in America? People love football so much in America. We ask every 4 years, why is it not an Olympic sport? That's a thing that happens every Olympics, and we forget the criteria that a sport must be able to perform and must be performed by both men and women at a high level.
That's right.
And I'm sorry to tell you, Nicaragua, South Sudan, Niger do not have women's football teams that are equipped and ready to roll. That's just the reality. Okay? So this is a situation where, of course, ESPN knows if there's football on, people will watch it. Even if you're not in ACC country, if it's football on, you can go to any local bar, and what will be on the TV screens? Football. That's just what this is. ESPN knows that it's going to get its ducats and make much more than what it's putting out on the ACC, or else they would have been leaking stuff about the downfall and putting things out that were very intensely aimed at ACC's downfall through some very easy channels where we would all be like, what is going on here? Why is ESPN so giddy to release the grant of rights and things like that? But they're not, for obvious reasons, that they have the ACC. They're taking advantage of the ACC with a favorable deal. Who would get out of a deal where they're getting advantage? I would never leave a job where they're paying me too much money to not work hard. That's what ESPN is getting here.
Now, I want to add some context when we come back because, hey, just because, or if ESPN does pick up that option beyond 2027, that doesn't automatically mean the ACC wins. Florida State and Clemson are stuck forever. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Plus, who has the best argument for Coach of the Year, ACC preseason Coach of the Year? I want to dive into that when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. I'm only getting started with eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you check out our other shows. Kenton co-hosts Locked On Wolfpack, talking everything NC State. I host Locked On Canes, talking everything Miami Hurricanes. Those shows are available, much like this one, for free on YouTube and for free wherever you get your podcasts. And so, again, Kenton, I want to reiterate that even if ESPN, with no hesitation, were to opt in to that TV deal, that doesn't mean it's case closed and Florida State and Clemson are stuck, right? Like Doug Rohan, the attorney from Rohan Law, pointed out, and whether this is true, I guess this would also stand to the courts. But Florida State and Clemson don't have to win every argument. The ACC might have to win every argument to keep them in, but Florida State and Clemson only have to win one argument. And that extension of the TV deal, that's not the only thing that could validate or invalidate the grant of rights, right? If they can prove that, the conference was not negotiating in good faith and fulfilling their fiduciary duties, there could be other loopholes here that we're not even thinking of. There are other ways that Florida State and Clemson can quote unquote win and either get out for free or get out for a discounted price. But people are pointing out maybe you shouldn't expect ESPN just to hit the hit the red button and just blow up the ACC before 2027, like some say they will.
Yeah, I think that those are two different arguments in terms of whether or not this case is won outright by the ACC and whether or not the grant of rights or whether or not the TV deal is going to get renewed. Right? Let's make that very clear. We are very much so saying you are in delusion if you believe that ESPN will cancel a deal that they have their business partner in a compromising position for. That's not going to happen. But that is also not a guarantee that, hey, the case is over. Florida State and Clemson go home. You have to be with the ACC for forever. That's not what's happening here. And, to the extent of what you said and what Rohan Law said, with you don't have to win every point, you just have to win a point. I think you have to win multiple points if you're going to get out for a discounted rate, a very deeply prorated rate from what we're thinking is the number, which is $500 million, I believe, was the figure that the ACC stated. I think you're going to have to win on multiple fronts to get that greatly reduced. But with that in mind, again, these two things they're issues that are tangentially related, but they're not overlapping. The grant of rights in this case, or the TV deal in this case, are very close to each other, but they're not overlapping in that it's not a guarantee that, hey, if one is aligned with the other, then that gives a definitive answer in terms of if it's a yes that they're renewing, which, again, by all accounts, the people that I've spoken to on every side of this thing, both from ESPN and the ACC, I have heard nothing about it making any type of sense, about anybody thinking anything. And normally, if there have been other moments where I've asked about situations where people have just been tight-lipped, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm waiting with bated breath to see what happens here. This is one of those times folks have told me outright that the chances of this thing not being renewed slim to none. But again, that does not end these cases. That does not. Yeah. It just means we're going to move further into these cases, and we're going to finally start moving from peppering each other with jabs here to folks taking full-out body blows and trying to land knockout punches.
All right, so let's move on to some ball. Late last week, we talked about those ACC preseason media polls that came out. We voted on all-conference team preseason. Preseason player of the year, Miami's Cam Ward was named that. But, Kenton, one thing that they didn't have us vote on was coach of the year. And that really got me thinking. First of all, what you go through recent ACC coaches of the year, sometimes the coach who wins the conference championship does get that, but it's usually in the context of you improved the product on the field and the win totals from the year before. So I wonder if, in the case of Mike Norvell, who won the award last year, rightfully so, ACC Coach of the Year, if he set the bar so high for himself after, a 13-0 conference championship season, that he's going to be able to repeat that award with anything less than 13-0, and maybe that wouldn't even be enough if another coach, exceeds their own expectations. So I look at teams that have an opportunity to significantly raise their win total and their relevance from a year ago. I definitely think Dave Doran at NC State is going to be very much in that mix. And NC State has become like a popular pick as a team that could reach the ACC championship game. I think if Doran can do that, he's got a really good chance at winning the award, especially when his team gets slept on, relative to the FSUs and the Clemsons and even the Miamis of the world. I do think Mario Cristobal, if the Hurricanes can get to the ACC title game, that he could build a strong case after 7-5 season last year, if he can improve that to 10 or so wins this year. I wonder about, what do you think on Dabo Swinney? Because I know people talk as if Clemson is just really fallen off. I mean, they won 9 games last year, but if they were to win 10 or 11 games and win a conference championship this year, I could see Dabo winning it.
There's a group out of Detroit called Doughboys Cash Out, also known as DBCO, and they have a song called Never Fell Off, okay? The context of the song was basically people anticipating that the group was going to be done after they released an album where their number sales weren't necessarily great. And then Never Fell Off came out, and they were very emphatic that the group was still together, still going strong. Everything was rolling there. If I'm Dabo and I win it, I'm not saying that I come out to that song to accept the award, but I think about it. I take a second and say, is it worth it? Maybe. But in all seriousness, I think that this award, it often follows one of 2 criteria. Are you the champion in a purely or a truly dominant fashion? Because that's always going to get you there. If that's
true. Yeah.
When Clemson went 15-0 and they were I believe it was a game against Georgia Tech where Travis Etienne had 8 carries between the tackles for 190 or 200 some odd yards. It was something insane because he had an 80-yarder and a 60-yarder in there in terms of the distance of his rushes. But either you have to be that. So that's Norvell's only chance to win it. Norvell, if he's going to win it, Florida State has to not only run the table, they have to whoop the wheels off folks. I don't think they're that ahead of the conference. I don't. So I think that rules Norvell out. And then you get to the rest. The rest, how do the other teams win it that don't beat that your dominant criteria? We saw Elko win it without winning the conference championship.
Yeah.
We saw Fuente win it without winning the conference championship. We saw, I believe, Kelly won it without winning the championship. Although Brian Kelly is a little bit of a different, because the ACC gave every award they could to Notre Dame that year. If Notre Dame did decent, if a guy did decent from Notre Dame in this, we're going to give him the award.
Yeah, I think the ACC thought if we give because they remember for context, in 2020, Notre Dame had to officially enter temporarily enter the conference. I think the ACC thought if we give them every award, maybe they'll stay.
Exactly. And I'm still upset that Peyton Wilson's ACC Defensive Player of the Year is sitting up there in South Bend with JOK. He didn't deserve it. I'm sorry. Golden Domers. He didn't deserve it. But now, moving on from there, what am I saying by saying that, right? All these Dave Clawson, another guy who won it without winning a championship. I'm saying this to say the only other path is a drastic improvement upon last year, or people thinking you're going to suck and you're good. Those are the only ways that you can get it done. So that leaves the best of the rest teams. I think Mario Cristobal is going to have a hard time winning it. I do, because of how good his players are and the perception around his coaching. I think he's going to have a tough time winning. Nobody thinks they're going to suck. Nobody has ever seen Miami and said, they're going to be a 7-win team this year. So he has to fall in that truly dominant category, which I don't think is necessarily fair to Mario. I think if he did a job where they were, 12-1 or 11-2 and got to Charlotte, I think he should be in more consideration than he likely will be. So then again, after Mario, now you get into the standards of the Coach Doran at NC State. You get into Coach Pry at Virginia Tech. You get into all these guys that if they win 10 games, they're very likely to get in. But I'll say this, and this may be a hot take. People may look at me crazy for this. I have a very strong suspicion that a guy named Brent is going to win the award next year. I have a very strong suspicion because I could see Georgia Tech winning 8 or 9 games, and that's a much more compelling case than a 10-3 Miami, than 9-4, 10-3 Wolfpack. Then I struggle to say, but I gotta say it, an 11-2 Clemson. Clemson has to run the table. They've set that standard to where nobody's going to look at Dabo, and this is unfair to him because if he could get Cade Klubnik to play good ball, that's a miracle. That's big time. That's objectively big time
stuff right there.
It really is. The young man came up with a read option on a play that was a dive. This man threw a bubble screen on 4th and 1 when a 230-pound back going downhill was your first option. So with that in mind, I really and truly think that Key and Pry are in prime time situations to where neither one of those guys have to win the conference. If Pry or Key wins 9+ games, I think they're a shoo-in for it. I think they're a shoo-in, which is not the case for Dorn, which is not the case for Cristobal, not the case for Dabo, not the case for Norvell, not the case for our guy Braum, because Braum 9 games will be a step back. So You're looking at this thing and you're saying the only other exception I can think of that will fall into this category out there at SMU, if Lashley can win 8-9, he could get it because it's like your first year here, you came in and wrecked shop. That's exciting. And, that's pretty much it. I don't think that Cal has the horses in the stable. We are going to have a Cal fan on pretty soon, to talk about whether or not we believe what they believe in terms of Arizona and Arizona State. But I don't believe that they have a shot at being good enough to win it. Same for Stanford, Boston College, Wake, all those things.
Well, I think this is good news. If I'm the guy who runs the trophy department, I can save time. I can just chisel in the name Brent now with the last name to be filled in a few months. So I could save time.
TBD, exactly. Put Brent space. Just leave it. Just leave it right there.
Well, there's a new batch of preseason power rankings out courtesy of Athlon Sports. Is there any revolutionary stuff in here, or did they kind of just go with the status quo flow? We'll talk about it. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Guys, throughout the summer, FanDuel has kept me engaged in sports. It's made me more interested in gymnastics events and track and field and golf. I've also had a lot of fun placing wagers on international soccer throughout the summer, baseball, NBA Summer League even. I'm into that. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm bored. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. And football is going to be here before we know it, guys, by the way. So let's enjoy these last couple of quiet weeks. NFL preseason is a thing again now, but college football is going to be here in a few weeks. You can get on top of all of it at FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Also, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Football, one of the newest shows on this Locked On network. And our very good friend, Spencer McLaughlin, and Kenton and I make sporadic appearances on his show. It's hard enough for us keeping up with one conference. Spencer is keeping up with the Power Four. He's keeping up with the Group of Five. He does a fantastic job on Locked On College Football. Check it out each and every day, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so Kenton, I was opening up this morning the Athlon Sports ACC preseason power rankings, and sometimes Athlon, and I write for their Miami affiliate site, by the way. So I'm a company man. I support Athlon. Sometimes they have hot takes on certain things at the national side, but I don't tell me if this is pretty status quo. This is pretty similar to the ACC media vote. When they order their ACC power rankings, they've got Florida State number 1. They've got Clemson at number 2. They've got Miami at 3rd. They've got NC State at 4th. So I think so far in Louisville 5th. I think that's the exact order. Was that the order that the media voted for the ACC, or was that a little?
Yes, different? It is. Yes, it is. Same. That was the exact order. Boo! I'm booing you. I'm throwing tomatoes at you, Athlon. I'm throwing tomatoes. Boo! Let me tell you something.
How dare you? attacking my livelihood.
I'm sorry, Dono. I'm gonna attack your livelihood. I got to do it. Okay, I got to do it. I love your family. You know I love the wife and kid. But I got to do it.
You're taking food out of my 6-year-old son's mouth right now.
The reality is this. I don't understand. Don't get me wrong, right? I love the fact that everybody is on board for just about what we're on board for. I like that everybody thinks like us. But it's like that old thought of, if everybody thought like you, the world is a boring place. This ACC is too wide open to have everybody going chalk. Somebody should be looking at a really odd, really wonky ranking and saying, get up here. Let's dance. Come on. Let's do it. Let's do something wild. Because, again, this is an ACC while Florida State is the favorite because they're the big dog on the block. And in order to beat a man, you got to beat the man. And not too many have beat the man recently. Absolutely, I understand. But I struggle with, if somebody gave me 100 chances to pick the ACC, I would not pick it the same way every single time. I just wouldn't. I'd like to believe I was consistent enough to say across 100 different realities, I'll pick it the same way. I know for a fact I'm not picking it exactly this way every time. I've got to believe, Louisville gets over the hump. I think they're close. I think they keep Chuck upright. They're going to do it. I got to believe, Clemson's dynasty is not just like, it's not good, it's over. They're going to be the 5th best team in the conference this year. Cristobal's going to win it. He's got all the talent. He's got a hell of a coaching staff. They've got players like you have never seen at all the position or the impact positions. Everybody knows quarterback, pass rusher. If you got 2 of those that are dominant, you can figure out the rest, and they got both. Athlon, no disrespect. Keep paying Dono, of course. Keep paying Dono.
Please,
keep my man on. Keep my man employed and working. But I need to see somebody get a little crazy.
Well, listen, I did. I did vote for Miami at number 1, so I went maybe a little homerism, but I did go against the grain. I did go as an Athlon representative. I did go against the grain.
I love that. And I also went against the grain in terms of my picks for the ACC, because while I believe that Florida State is the most likely to win, I said, you know what? I don't want to do what's most likely. I want to go with what I think is going to happen, with what I can, I've seen enough ball to think that I know a little something. I'm going to pick somebody else. And y'all will figure out at the end of the year who I pick. Because if this team wins, oh boy, I'm going to be insufferable. I'm going to be so insufferable. And it may not be a team that you think. Me and Donald have already talked about this, but I'm telling you, if my champion comes through, we're going to have a time on this show.
I think he might have just dropped the hint that maybe that one reporter who voted Boston College, he might be looking. It wasn't AJ Black. It was Kenton Gage. You might be looking. Which is funny because, going back, there were people making revolutionary picks because Boston College, they in the ACC media poll, BC got 1 vote in first place.
Yeah.
Cal, as we talked about, Cal got 2 votes.
Yeah.
And by the way, shout out to the Cal fans, because I know switching over to Locked On ACC was probably a big transition for you. You used to watch Locked On Pac-12. That Spencer, who now hosts Locked On College Football, used to host Locked On Pac-12. The Cal fans found us, Kenton, because we had that little segment, a couple segments last week. One, there was that Cal fan on X who said that the ACC, that they're not afraid of any team in the ACC. It's a bunch of Arizona and Arizona States. And then we poked fun at 2 media members voting Cal to win the conference. And the Cal fans are in our comments like, bros, you're sleeping on us. You're sleeping on the Golden Bears.
Listen, if Jaden on the Bears wake us up, I'm going to be excited about it. I love chaos. I love a little anarchy. Give me a little bit of lawlessness and rulelessness in terms of who wins the ACC. Come on in here and show us that we're Arizona and Arizona State just last year, not the years before that. But yeah, come on in here and show us whose place this is. I am excited for Cousin Cal to get here. Y'all know I love me some SMU. Y'all know Stanford, I have no problems or qualms with them either. They're a nerd school, and I love me a good nerd school too. My heart goes out to the Stanfords, the Northwesterns, the Vanderbilts, all of those schools of the world. Because, man, y'all got the toughest time there is. You're not quite an Ivy, but you got those standards, so it's tough to get the best guys in. And I'm absolutely geeked up to see what these teams can do.
Oh, man. So And by the way, we didn't even talk about this because we're locked on ACC, but I recall a couple weeks ago at SEC Media Days, 2 people voted for Vanderbilt to win the SEC. Like, I think that's way crazier than 2 votes for Cal. Like, Cal has a better chance. Cal has a better chance in the ACC than Vanderbilt has. Like, if Vanderbilt were to win the SEC this year, Kenton, that would be 10 times bigger than when Leicester City won the EPL. That would be bigger than Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson. Like, I mean, you think about that freaking conference with Georgia and Bama and LSU and all
and Texas and Oklahoma and all these.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Let me give you just a quick example from this show, because I didn't even know Donna was going to bring this up. I did not know Donna was going to bring this up, and yet I talked about the fact that there's no women football abroad, right? Who is the only FBS team to have a woman actively participate on this roster? Who has in the past? Vanderbilt. They had a kicker.
Yes, that's right.
Vanderbilt.
Kicker. Yeah.
We talked about the fact that this thing doesn't exist in the world, and they had it at an SEC school. And you want me to believe that school, in less than 3 years removed from that, is going to be your champion? No. Listen, if somebody told me, Ken, you got to pick one of these or your life's on the line, the Martians had a death being pointed at Earth, I would say, can I get some time to make this decision? And during that time, I would call my mom, tell her I love her, tell her that, it's been a fun ride for Earth. I'm going to go with Cal because there's no way Vandy's going to do it. But, again, I'm excited about this season. I think the ACC is wide open, and I think that there may be some surprising teams in here that many folks are sleeping on that, I'm excited. I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
Well, never sleep on Locked On ACC. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you subscribe. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that thumbs up button. Smash that like button. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. Thank you for making us your first listen. Make sure you make Locked On Wolfpack and Locked On Canes your second and third listens. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.